Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VCE Zone 7 Gardening Plant Clinic. Our topic today is native fruit trees, the common pawpaw and common persimmon. On the left, you can see the common pawpaw, and on the right, the common persimmon. The Zone 7 Gardening Virtual Plant Clinic series highlight native and other plants suited to grow well in our Mid-Atlantic USDA Hardiness Zone 7 gardens. These series of clinics are sponsored by the Virginia Cooperative Extension program of Virginia's 2 land-grant universities. Let's turn to what's blooming with Catherine. Russian sage, an attractive perennial for your sunny cottage or rock garden. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Linda. So today I'm going to be talking about Russian sage, Persimmon, a triplexifolia. They are actually very resemblance, pretty much like a lavender, but it's not a lavender. Despite its name of Russian sage, it's neither from Russia nor a sage. It's actually a native to Central Asia, which is current day Afghanistan to Tibet. It's in the mint family, and as described earlier, it resembles a lavender. And for areas where folks have difficulty growing lavender, Russian sage is a good replacement from an aesthetic perspective. It was named after B.A. Perovsky around the 1840s. Russian sage is a perennial, a shrub, and an evergreen. The standard Russian sage grows 3 to 5 feet tall and 3 to 5 feet wide. For its foliage, it's opposite gray-green leaves. It's about 1 to 2 inches long. It has a whitish down to its stem. The flowers can range anywhere between a light blue to purple, 9 to 12 inches on the panicles. It blooms mid to late summer, which is right now. Russian sage is growing the hardiness zone between 3 to 9. It likes full sun. Well-drained soil is very important for successful growth of Russian sage. It's very drought tolerant, very low maintenance once established. You prune it annually, preferably in spring, and you fertilize prior to the new growth begins, and that's in spring as well. For propagation, the seed can be sown at any time. The germination process takes anywhere between 1 to 4 months, around the 60 to 65 degree Fahrenheit. You can actually put it in cold weather for 2 to 6 weeks, usually in the refrigerator, to enhance germination. Once the seedling is large enough to handle, you can start doing the transplant. Before you plant it outside, you want to harden the seedling, and the planting outside is preferably in the late spring. There are 7 species of Persimmon, but only 1 is commonly available. However, there are several varieties on the market. Blue haze has a paler blue flowers. Blue spire has a deep lobed leaf with deep purple flowers. The Ferragon, which is introduced by Ernest Pagel of Germany, has more light blue flowers and a finer, more dissected foliage. Little spire is more of the compact dwarf variety, which grows only up to 2 feet tall. And Longing has the stiff stem, more upright, so it has a formal growth habit. If anyone is interested in further reading on the Russian sage, here are the 2 recommended sources. One's from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. The other one's from NC State University, NC State Extension Master Gardeners.
Was there any either one of these 2 that you really especially liked and point out to folks?
I really like the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They have very extensive research done on the Russian sage.
Yes, Susan has a lot of great articles. And just a question to throw out, is the Russian sage deer proof or deer resistant?
They are deer resistant, is in the mint family, so deers is very deer resistant to that.
Okay, that's great to know. All right. Well, thank you, Catherine. What an attractive plant with its tiny purple blue flowers and that stunning foliage. Plus, they're deer resistant. That's a great plus for me because I have lots of deer roaming. Next, let's turn to our topic for today's virtual plant clinic, native fruit trees with Sylvia and Elizabeth. Over to you, Sylvia, for the common pawpaw.
Thank you, Linda. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be talking to you about the common pawpaw. I actually did not know anything about this tree until just recently, a few years ago. And the reason why I learned about this tree is because I was looking for a native fruit tree and this popped up and I had no idea what it was. And I looked at the fruit and I was very confused because they're unusually shaped and they're not fruits that you usually find in the supermarket. So there are several different names for this plant. People call it pawpaw, Indian banana. I think there's a lot of reference about banana. I think it's because it's meat, it's yellow. Also, people call this fruit poor man's banana. It's from the custard apple family, and it has a tropical taste. People say it tastes like banana, it tastes like mango and pineapple. I actually had not tasted one, and I'm, because they're not available in supermarkets, so they are a little difficult to find. However, I have heard that people who hike around this area, they are able to find maybe around September, October, they are able to find these fruits in their hiking trail. What is so special about this fruit is that it's native to the US. It's a its fruit is fairly, it can grow to be fairly big. So the fruit can grow up to 16 ounce and also 6 inches in length. So you can see the map on the right hand side of the screen. It's native to a pretty big area of the US. So if you plant it in Virginia, it's definitely an area where it can thrive. And in fact, once I learned about this tree, I planted 6 plants in my yard. They are slow growing, so I'm still waiting for them to be mature enough to bear fruit. And it's kind of amazing because I got them when they were seedlings and they were no more than, I want to say, 1.5 feet tall, and that was 3 years ago. And now they are, I think, 10 feet tall. So they, even though they're slow growing in terms of you have to plant them for a number of years before they bear fruit, they do grow its height pretty fast. So they are hardy in zone 5A through B to 8B. And Linda had mentioned earlier that we're in zone 7A, so this will be a perfect tree for us. At maturity, it goes up to 15 to 30 feet. It does very well on most soils, but if it's well drained, deep, fertile, slightly acidic, they tend to do better. Like I said before, they're very slow growing, and they usually start producing fruits 3 to 4 years after planting. So I think I'm right there. I think like next year, I'm thinking my fruit will be bearing, my plants will be bearing fruit. So in its native habitat, it's an understory tree, so it can tolerate shade very well. But usually when people plant these trees in their yard, the tree will get plenty of sunlight. And it's good for the tree to get plenty of sunlight because that would encourage the tree to produce fruit. When the tree gets a lot of sunlight, it forms these shape that looks like a pyramid. So it's very attractive, and it has very long, dark green, droopy leaves that turns yellow in the fall. So it's a very interesting looking plant, and I think it can definitely add interest to your landscape. Its flower is very interesting. The flower is upside down. It's a maroon color, and it blooms between March and May. And for the first time this year, one of my pawpaw tree bloomed, which was so exciting. And actually, it took me a little bit to figure out what the flowers were because they were kind of tiny, and I hadn't expected expect them to come. So it's definitely a very welcome sight, and they're very pretty. So this tree needs to be cross-pollinated for fruit to set, which means that you have to have at least 2 trees that are from 2 different seeds. They cannot be the same tree, so they need at least 2 trees for fruit to set, and that's why I planted 6 just to be sure. Another thing that's interesting about the pollination of the pawpaw blossom is that bees don't seem to be interested in the flowers of the pawpaw. So usually pollination is carried out by flies and beetles. So if you look at the picture on the right, you see a picture of the flower. But if you look closely, you can actually see a fly that's pollinating the flower. So there are very many good reasons to plant this tree in your home garden. One is it can produce edible fruit. Then the next reason is it's fairly small in size, so 15 to 30 feet. And also, if you look at the picture here, it has really lush, tropical looking, long, elongated green leaves that are quite massive. Each leaf is bigger than my hand. I think they're quite large size leaves, and they turn to different colors in the fall, which will add interest to your garden. Also, what's important about this tree in terms of the wildlife is that it's a host for the larva for zebra swallowtail butterfly. You can see here. So its larva, this butterfly's larva, eats exclusively the leaves of this plant. So you can help the wildlife by planting this tree in your garden. Also, this tree is resistant to many insects and disease, so it's fairly low maintenance tree. So here are the sources that I used to put together this presentation. Oh, I want to mention one more thing. There is actually a Pawpaw Festival. I think that's going to happen in the next couple of days. I just checked earlier. I think it's in Hartford County, Maryland. I think it's called like Celebration of Pawpaw, because I think there is a real active push in a lot of organizations to let people learn about this really amazing fruit tree. So there's a festival in Hartford County. I think it's this weekend, and where you can go, you can sample different type of pawpaw. I think they even make pawpaw ice cream. So I think if you're interested and try to just check out this tree, or like learn more about this tree, or check out the different taste, the flavor of the fruit, that might be an event that you want to go to.
Sylvia, is there anything that you wanted to point out from your sources that you particularly wanted to pass on to folks online?
I think the one from Virginia Tech, the second source, is very good, because I think it's more tailored to our area. Its information might be more relevant if someone from Virginia want to plant the pawpaw tree here.
All right, well, excellent. Thank you, Sylvia, for providing this information on this tropical banana mango tasting native fruit tree. And like you said, September is a great time to explore and look for those vibrant yellow fall colors, take a hike, or go to a local festival and maybe taste some pawpaw ice cream or jelly jam, something along those lines.
Can I add one more thing?
Certainly.
So the reason why we don't see pawpaw fruit in the supermarket is because they don't travel well, they don't keep well. So usually people will have to enjoy them very soon after they're picked, and that's why it's not a commercially viable fruit, at least not yet. I mean, I figure science can do wonders, but right now, as the type that we have, it's not a commercially viable fruit.
So they're very perishable then. So exactly. I guess eat them off the tree fresh, I guess. Exactly. Huh? Well, thank you for sharing that. That was really interesting. So, all right, part 2 on native fruit trees. Elizabeth will share with us some information on the common persimmon, another tasty fruit. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Linda. I would like to comment that several years ago, we had a speaker come to talk to us about pawpaws. And I can't remember his name, but I do remember his festival in
Yes.
Harford County. So
Yes.
it is real, and they're expecting you. So
That's true. That's coming up soon, just like Sylvia said. So,
Right.
yep.
So today I'm going to talk about the common persimmon. It's pronounced Diospyros virginia. It is a woody deciduous tree in the ebony family, and it has beautiful glossy leaves. The name comes from Puchaman, which was used by the native Indian Algonquin tribes, and it is the tree is native to eastern and central United States. Bear with me, I am so interested in ethnobotanical uses. I always try to include them just because they're interesting to me. The uses of the persimmon, inner bark and unripe fruit were used to treat fevers, diarrhea, and hemorrhage. They made an indelible ink from the fruit, and the flowers were used for honey production. So I find all that fascinating. We never think about it anymore, but it was very vital to people, to our ancestors. It has an edible fruit used for syrups, jellies, jams, ice cream, or pies. And I would like to emphasize the fact it has to be ripe. The unripe persimmons are very astringent. You don't want to touch them. Wait for them to ripen up to their beautiful orange color. The heartwood of the persimmon tree is nearly black, seeing as how it's in the ebony family. It's extremely hard, and it's used to make golf club heads, billiard cues, and shoe lasts. So this is a pretty useful tree. Okay, the description. Native to eastern and central United States, it flourishes from New England to Florida and west to Texas. It is hardy from zones 4A to 9A. This is a big tree. It can be 30 to 80 feet high, and the width can be 20 to 30 feet, 35 feet wide. So if you're going to plant one, make sure you have plenty of room. It is dioecious, requiring separate male and female trees to get fruit. And it has a distinctive bark, as you can see on the slide. It's easily identified, and it's called alligator bark. And I was out on some farmland recently, and I saw the alligator bark, and I identified a persimmon tree. The bark is very distinctive. Okay, so site preferences. It grows best in moist, well-drained, sandy soils in full sun, 6 hours daily, to partial shade, 2 to 6 hours daily. It requires a neutral pH, 6 to 7. It can tolerate hot, dry conditions, poor soils, urban conditions, and wind. Under harsh conditions, the persimmon may be stunted to a size of a shrub, 15 feet, but it will survive. It bears fruit in 4 to 9 years, often taking 10 years for full fruit production. The flowers, and I'm showing you male flowers. They are fragrant, small white to greenish yellow flowers. They bloom late in the spring. It is dioecious, as I said before, tubular male flowers appearing in 2 to 3 flower clusters. Female flowers are single, bell or urn shaped with 4 recurved petals. And I couldn't find a picture of a female persimmon blossom, but the male will have to do. It blooms from May to June, and it pollinates these male flowers pollinate the female flowers to produce fruit. Okay, benefits, many benefits. First of all, the fruit is beautiful. It's a beautiful color of orange. It attracts bees, butterflies, moths, pollinators, small mammals, and songbirds. Specialized bees released at the time of flowering produce a persimmon honey. Persimmon is a good fruit source for birds, small mammals, white-tailed deer, foxes, raccoons, and black bears. And it was emphasized in the literature that the deer especially depend on the persimmon as a source of fruit. The deer also eat leaves and twigs during the winter. Diseases and pests. A number of insects attack the tree, but none of them do serious damage to its overall health and lifespan. It is susceptible to leaf spot. Main defoliators can be webworms, echo hickory horn devils, which may severely damage a young plant. The fruit drop from the female trees is messy, but it's not a hazard to growth by attracting pests. Mostly there's just more fruit produced than can be harvested and used. So it will drop off either before it's fully ripened or it will get heavy and drop. Propagation and pruning. It's propagated by grafting, root cutting, or seed. Grafted trees produce fruit sooner than those grown from seed. The deep taproot makes it very difficult to transplant. So make sure you have it where you want it before you plant it. And it produces root suckers, which should be removed to maintain size, unless you would like to let it grow abundantly. Landscape use. And this is truly a gem of a tree because it has four-season interest as an ornamental or fruit tree in the home landscape. It can be placed in a butterfly garden, children's garden, pollinator, or rain gardens. It has brilliant fall colors and fruit, continuing into late fall. Edible persimmon fruits 1 to 2 inches in diameter mature into an orange fruit, often reddish purple in color, and may persist into the winter. It may stay on the trees. The distinctive bark is decorative for winter. It's an excellent addition to an edible garden. It needs 24 to 60 feet for planting and resistant to fire and moderately deer resistant. After all, the deer come along and chew the twigs in the winter. I was wondering about some of the cultivars because I have seen a cultivar called C100. And while I was doing research in the North Carolina State Extension plant box, I noticed that there were 2 articles about common persimmon. One was an article specifically on C100, and the other was just on common persimmon. And I was trying to find out why the variety, the cultivar, was called C100. And the only thing I could find out was that was just the batch number used by the plant breeder. Instead of giving it a name, they just gave it a batch number. So C100 is a very popular cultivar and is perhaps the most popular cultivar. The Claypool cultivar was named after James Claypool, who was the first breeder of commercial persimmon. There's also a Dollywood, an early golden cultivar, which instead of having the orangish fruit, the fruit is more golden. And then there's another cultivar that is popular because by the batch name, which is I-115. Today, I found some really interesting information, both in the North Carolina Extension Garden Plant Box. There were 2, as I said before, there were 2 sources. One was just on common persimmon, and the other, which was much more detailed, was on the C100. And then I found a new source, which was the Glen Arboretum, Towson University. And I thought it had some very interesting information. And that's where I found all the information about the ethnobotanical uses. And also the Missouri Botanical Garden always has wonderful photos that are open source that you can borrow to use in presentations. And that's it. And thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. So many benefits, as you pointed out, to wildlife and to people. So thank you for sharing. All right, so next we'll turn to gardener's tips for September. So here's a few tips that I saw for September to pass along to folks. So the first one is, except for tulips, spring bulbs might be planted as soon as they are available, but tulips should be kept in a cool, dark place and planted in late October. Now's the time to divide your peonies and be sure to replant them in a sunny site and avoid planting too deeply. Autumn is a good time to add manure, leaf, or compost to your gardens to increase the organic matter. And then monitor for spider mite activity. So to reduce the numbers by hosing off with a forceful spray of water. Seasonal loss of interneedles on conifers is normal this time of year, and it may be especially noticeable on the pines. And lastly, you can start moving in your house plants indoors, washing off the foliage and checking for drainage holes, for pill bugs or other pests before bringing the plants in. And then check out again the Fairfax County Master Gardener website. You can subscribe by email to receive notices when our site is updated. You can follow us on Instagram at fairfax.master.gardeners. This is the second year we've held these informative sessions. So check out past presentations from our virtual plant clinics on our VCE-Fairfax County YouTube site. Thank you for attending. Happy gardening, and hope to see you again soon at a future plant clinic as we talk about seasonal gardening topics.